Days after undergoing surgery that gave him a new arm, Anakin was remembering his last mission on Geonosis, when the Count's blows were like dance steps, precise and elegant, and in less than a minute, Anakin's lightsaber was thrown away and his arm fell to the ground. The Chosen One fell defeated by a man who didn't even seem to be trying. He remembered the Count's final words. "You are one young Skywalker. Did you really think you could defeat the most powerful duelist who ever lived?" Anakin Skywalker had never felt anything so devastating. The image of Dooku with his curved lightsaber and graceful movements repeated itself in his mind like a wound that would not heal. He no longer thought about the war, victory, Padme, or the Jedi. He thought only of that moment when he failed. Anakin felt that another part of himself was crumbling. The defeat exposed a fear he would never admit, the fear of being weak. When Padme came to visit him, he greeted her coldly, looking at her as if she were a distant memory. "I can't go on with this, Padme. I have to defeat him," said Anakin, before turning his back and ending the relationship without explanation. Skywalker left in silence, and Padme broke down, tears welling up in her eyes. They had risked their lives together, fought side by side, and for a brief moment believed that love could blossom even in dark times. But Anakin, poisoned by wounded pride, chose to walk away. That night, alone in his quarters, he took apart his lightsaber and reassembled it dozens of times. He felt anger toward himself, toward his limitations, and that anger became fuel. He began to train in silence, always in the shadows of the temple, avoiding the common halls. He cut down automatons, trained in the hologram room-facing versions of Dooku, and even cut steel blocks with a single stroke of his lightsaber. He slept little, ate poorly, and failed to complete missions assigned to him. He began watching recordings of the masters in combat, studying lightsaber styles like an obsessed man. He didn't want to be good, he wanted to be the best, the most lethal, the one who would never be humiliated again and who would take revenge on the Count. Obi-Wan noticed the change. His Padawan's gaze had lost its impulsive sparkle and had become dark, fixed, as if there were only one purpose in his mind. One morning, he tried to talk to him. He told him that the Force was not about domination, it was about balance. That defeating Dooku was no more important than saving lives or upholding Jedi principles. But Anakin wouldn't listen. He shouted that his master didn't understand, that he had failed to train him properly, that he cared too much about rules and too little about results. The argument ended with Obi-Wan leaving in silence, fearing how much he had already lost the young man he loved like a brother. Even so, Anakin isolated himself even more. At night, he silently watched the other Jedi Masters train, noting patterns, techniques, forms of attack and defense. He began to try to reproduce them on his own, but his movements were dry, rough, lacking the fluidity that the Masters demonstrated. It was then that Master Yoda sought him out. Anakin sat before the small master, tired, his eyes sunken, but still burning with desire. Without wasting any time, it was Anakin who began to ask, "I want to know what the best fighting style is. Master Yoda? Dooku was your Padawan, so I think you are the best among all to tell me which style is superior to Dooku's. Which one should I use to destroy him?" Yoda, with his calm voice and attentive eyes, replied, "There is no best style. Use yours, you must. Each form, each reflex is unique to the user. Understanding is more important than mastery." Anakin frowned, as if those words were smoke escaping through his fingers. He interpreted the lesson differently, not as an invitation to reflection, but as confirmation that he should indeed study all styles, master them, and overcome Count Dooku. So that's it. If each style is a reflection of its user, I will be a reflection of all of them, and thus I will be able to take revenge on Dooku, he thought as he left, more convinced than ever. After the meeting, Yoda walked slowly to the inner gardens, where Obi-Wan was waiting for him. "Failed our attempt was. Ashamed I am," he said with regret. Obi-Wan agreed silently. "Observe now we must. Too much control of the Chosen One, frustration will only bring." Kenobi felt torn. Part of him wanted to intervene, shake Anakin, bring him back to his senses. But another part knew, perhaps too late, that the wounds in young Skywalker's heart were deep, and that he would only return of his own accord, if he returned at all. The Jedi Temple began to seem bleak to Anakin. The place where defenders of peace were trained now seemed full of limitations, restrictions, and failures. He no longer trusted the Jedi philosophy, only combat. He spent hours in lonely areas of the temple, facing maximum-level simulators or building more challenging combat droids. If one style didn't satisfy him, he dove into the next. He was ceasing to be a Padawan and becoming a lone warrior, shaped not by wisdom but by pain. Regular classes no longer interested him. He heard only the sound of lightsabers cutting through the air, the impact on metal walls, the clinking of destroyed droids. He didn't even think about Padme anymore. His fellow Jedi stopped looking for him. The Council, though concerned, feared that any direct attempt to intervene would push him further away. Anakin had become a whirlwind, spinning faster, deeper, toward something even he didn't fully understand. In the Jedi Temple archives, Anakin spent the night scanning every available holocron on lightsaber combat styles. He mapped the records of historic duels, compared notes from ancient masters, and tracked every known style, from Form I to Form 7. He didn't want to learn by contemplation, he wanted to apply. He created lists, analyzed the strengths and weaknesses of each form, and discovered which knights still active were known practitioners. He sought out each one with the coldness of someone searching for a weapon. His request was always direct: "Teach me your moves." The masters, reluctant at first, gave in to his persistence. But Anakin didn't want understanding. He wanted mastery. The first master he sought out was the veteran Kento Vaughn, a practitioner of Shurcho, Form I. Old and primitive, it was the basis of all duels. Its wide, circular, well-marked movements were great against multiple enemies and useful for training beginners. Anakin quickly understood the fundamentals, but considered them rudimentary. Still, he threw himself voraciously into each sequence of attacks and defenses. He fought multiple opponents in the training grounds, trying to replicate Kento's raw mastery. For him, the beauty of Form I was not in the philosophy of balance, but in the possibility of hitting every point on a battlefield with controlled brutality. Soon after, Anakin traveled to find Jedi Master Terra, guardian of Form 2, the Makashi. It was the same form as Dooku, focused on elegance, precision, and control of thrusts. Terra tried to explain to Anakin that Makashi was not just posture, it was a mindset. It was the calmness of one who watches the enemy fall before striking the blow. Anakin listened in silence and, picking up his lightsaber, focused only on the rhythm and straight cuts, the precise blocks, the refined footwork. His body adapted well, but his mind did not match the serenity required. Still, he replicated the movements perfectly, like a dance without music. Inside, he felt anger at having been defeated by that style, and now he wanted to master it with fury. For Form 3, Sorisu, he sought out Master Teramis, the legendary swordsman and Jedi Temple instructor. Sorisu was the style of absolute defense. Short movements, lightsaber always close to the body, economy of energy, and a focus on resisting indefinitely. Teramis tried to make Anakin understand that Sorisu was about patience, not reactivity. But the young Skywalker, always impetuous, executed his blocks like a mechanical sequence, never waiting, just waiting for the moment to counterattack. He trained in the rain, in the middle of artificial windstorms, and in shooting simulations. He became almost invulnerable to blaster fire. However, the true spirit of Form 3, surviving without becoming corrupt, eluded his soul. Form 4, Ataru, was learned from none other than Master Yoda. The spinning jumps, swift aerial attacks, and extreme mobility required complete mastery of the body and the Force. Yoda tried to teach that Ataru was more than acrobatics. It was about fluidity, adaptation, and lightness. It was the dance of the Force among the branches of wisdom. Anakin threw himself into training on uneven terrain, suspension bridges, and fields of unstable gravity. He flew, spun, and advanced with his lightsaber in a spiral. But his every move was guided by ego, not instinct. Yoda watched with heavy eyes. High you flew, But face down on the ground you fell. Very funny it was, commented the playful master after one of Anakin's mistakes. Anakin was already a long-time practitioner of Form V, Gem So and Xian. It was a style focused on counterattacks. Xian, its variation, was excellent against ranged attacks, while Gem So excelled in close combat. Anakin was enchanted by the aggressiveness of the form. After all, it allowed him to absorb a blow and return it with even greater power. He practiced on elevated platforms, using weights, dueling with heavy droids and energy shields. Form 6, Nyman, was taught by Master Portbell, who combined various techniques in a fluid and calm style. Nyman was hybrid, less intense, more focused on the balance between combat and the use of the Force. It was the style of diplomats, of generals who did not want to fight but knew how to do so. Portbell insisted, "Harmony is the true strength of Nyman." Anakin didn't listen. He found the style slow, weak, almost passive. Still, he learned its routines, the sequence of simple movements, the smooth pirouettes, the integration of pushes with the Force. He used Nyman as a bridge between one style and another, disregarding its own identity. And at the end of training, he said goodbye coldly, eager for something more powerful. Finally, Anakin sought out Master Mace Windu, the guardian of the dreaded Vapad, Form 7. It was the most dangerous style of all, as it flirted with the dark side. It was channeled energy, tamed fury, and a dance between temptation and control. Mace hesitated. He said that very few could learn Vapad without succumbing. But Anakin insisted. Mace warned him, "This style will look you in the eye. You will see who you are." The training was brutal. Sharp, fast, explosive movements. Each strike required precision and intention. Anakin absorbed it like sweet poison. He reveled in the power, but did not understand its weight. Vapad was beginning to mold him from the inside out, and he didn't even realize it. At the end of intense months, Anakin returned to the temple exhausted, but his mind was racing. He had achieved what few Jedi had ever attempted, physical mastery of the 7 forms of combat. But it was like a mirror without a reflection. It lacked depth. His strikes were beautiful to behold, efficient but hollow. He didn't know when to apply each form, didn't understand the intention behind the stances. His eyes shone with technique, but his soul remained at war. Each training session gave him more tools but no answers. The emptiness in his chest grew at the same pace as his skill. The months passed like a silent storm. Anakin, now a restless shadow, eagerly accepted the most dangerous missions because he wanted to test everything he had learned. The first took him to a planet where fields of giant mushrooms hid a secret droid factory. Alone, he advanced through the bioluminescent vegetation, facing waves of mechanical soldiers. There, he used Xian to redirect shots with perfection and then slid between platforms with Ataru, jumping over rows of droids and cutting them down efficiently. Not a single shot hit him. In a matter of minutes, the factory was disabled, and he walked away as if nothing had happened, ignoring the minor injuries that burned beneath his tunic. The second mission was more complicated. On a different planet, a group of hunters had joined forces with space pirates and set a trap in crystal caves, where the reverberation of sounds confused sensors. Anakin fell into the ambush and, even responding with Makashi and Shircho, he couldn't anticipate the precise attacks of the pirates who were well-versed in guerrilla tactics. He defended himself long enough for Obi-Wan to arrive with reinforcements. Together, they defeated their enemies. After the battle, sitting among broken rocks, Anakin reflected. It wasn't just technique. It was knowing when and how to use it, and that he still lacked. The third mission took him to Lotho Minor, a filthy planet turned into a space junkyard. There, a hunter droid, enhanced with strategic intelligence, had rebelled and set traps with parts of ships and fragments of lightsabers. Anakin threw himself into the fight with brutality, using Vapad to destroy defenses and wielding Nyman to resist the shards that flew like blades. But the enemy adapted. The machine lured him into a magnetic corridor, where the young Jedi's attacks became predictable. Just as he was about to be captured, he was saved by Ahsoka and Plo Koon, who had tracked his signal. He barely thanked them. He was furious that he hadn't won alone. Blinded by his desire to prove himself, Anakin made a decision that would have alarmed the Jedi elders if they had known. Driven only by his own will, he began visiting the masters who had taught him. One by one, he challenged them to friendly duels. Against Kento Vaughn in an empty arena, he used Makashi and took him down with precision after minutes of careful maneuvering. On another planet, he faced Port Bell on a suspension bridge between cliffs and used Gemso to break his elegant guard. In an orbital junkyard, he faced another master, testing Sorisu against Sorisu until he found openings and won through exhaustion. Each victory seemed to confirm his illusion of mastery. Taramis was confronted in a peaceful sanctuary on Kashyyyk. Anakin tried to ignore the serenity of the place, and Nyman seemed weak again, but he applied Shurcho with brutality and won. Each combat was different, but in all of them, Anakin prevailed. His movements were perfect, but inside, something screamed. No victory brought him peace. No technique seemed sufficient. Still, his hunger grew. When he finally asked Mace Windu for a duel, he did so in silence. They met on a training platform high above Coruscant, surrounded by ships speeding by. The fight began with tension. Anakin attacked with everything he knew, mixing forms, changing styles with each new attempt. But Mace's Vapad was balanced fury. He absorbed Anakin's aggression and returned blows with twice the force. Each impact seemed to break the young man's very soul. In the end, Mace knocked him down with an explosion of kinetic energy channeled through the Force. Without a scratch on his robe, Windu simply said, "You still fight against yourself, Skywalker." Determined that he had to overcome even the impossible, Anakin then challenged Yoda. The combat took place atop a 1,000-year-old tree on a wild planet, under the glow of a constant aurora. Yoda didn't say a word, he just activated his lightsaber and leaped. The duel was almost invisible to the naked eye. Anakin used everything, Makashi to defend, Ataru to jump, Vapad to force. But Yoda was the wind and time itself. Every turn, every jump, every thrust came with devastating precision. Anakin fell 3 times, and 3 times he got back up, until the 4th time left him on the ground. "To be everyone, you have tried. Be yourself, you did not," said the master, slowly walking away. Humiliated and exhausted, Anakin returned to the temple without announcing himself. Defeating the other masters had filled him with pride, but his defeats at the hands of Yoda and Windu showed him the cruel truth. Technique without wisdom was just noise, and yet he would not admit it. He simply packed what he needed, deactivated the ship's trackers, and left in silence. No master knew where he was going, not even Obi-Wan. Anakin traveled through space as if fleeing from himself, but believing that he was marching toward his own consecration. So what if I couldn't defeat Yoda or Mace? No one in this world could defeat them. But I'm more than ready to take revenge on Count Dooku, he said to R2-D2, who accompanied him. In the depths of the galaxy, he jumped from system to system, interrogating informants, tracking signals, cross-referencing Jedi intelligence reports with abandoned clues. He repeated to himself like a mantra, "I am the result of all styles. I am the answer." Every night in the ship's cabin was a mental rehearsal of the confrontation. In the silence of hyperspace, he visualized his moves, predicting how he would face the Count, how he would avenge his defeat and finally prove that he had surpassed the limits imposed by any doctrine. Dooku's base was located on a forgotten moon orbiting Sereno, protected by variable frequency sensors and patrol droids. Anakin disabled most of them without triggering any alarms. He used techniques learned from Yoda to move fluidly through the shadows, applied Sorisu to deflect heat and gravity sensors, and scaled structures silently as he had done in his Ataru training. He reached the inner corridors, where he encountered maintenance droids and unsuspecting officers, passing unnoticed until he reached the underground throne rooms. There he challenged Count Dooku, who turned not with surprise, but with a refined smile and a courteous nod that accepted the duel. "I see you've learned to get to me without making a fuss, Skywalker," said the Count, his deep voice echoing off the columns. "But coming here is quite different from defeating me." Anakin did not respond. His lightsaber ignited with a blue crackle, and tension filled the air. Dooku activated his own curved lightsaber, and the clash began. Anakin advanced with a move inspired by Gemso, striking with force and weight, forcing the Count to retreat. But Dooku, with a simple spin, deflected the blow. Anakin then attempted a side cut with Makashi, but Dooku counterattacked with ease, as if dancing. "Curious," he murmured. "You imitate well, but you don't understand." Then Anakin retreated and jumped high, spinning with an Ataru aerial attack, twisting his body with speed, but Dooku slid to the side and parried with a minimal movement. Anakin landed on the floor and assumed the Xian stance, redirecting a small shot from a droid activated on the ceiling to try to divert the Count's attention. Dooku didn't even blink. He blocked the laser and kept his eyes fixed on the young Jedi. With growing anger, Anakin delivered 2 cross strikes with Shircho, using the space in the hall to his advantage, but each attack was read, parried, and responded to with the lethal precision of Dooku's Makashi, who seemed to enjoy dismantling his opponent's attempts. In a last effort, Anakin tried to channel the Vapad, striking with increasing speed, mixing anger and technique, pushing the Count against the steps of the hall. But it was his haste that sealed his defeat. Dooku twisted his fist slightly, disarming Anakin with an elegant movement and piercing the young man's shoulder with a precise cut that threw him to the ground. "You have studied the forms, but I have lived them. I have faced each one of them." The Count slowly walked away, signaling to the droids. Anakin, wounded, staggered before being hit by a blast and fell unconscious, a prisoner in the same dark cell where others had already succumbed. Time passed without count. When he awoke, Anakin saw only darkness and heard the Count's voice. Dooku spoke slowly, like a stern father offering wisdom to a rebellious son. "If you were more sensible, Skywalker, you would listen to reason. You seek power, but the power is here. There is still time." Anakin did not respond. Days passed, then weeks. The droids did not speak. The corridors were cold. And then Palpatine appeared. The Chancellor himself, wrapped in a dark cloak, entered the cell with slow steps. "My boy, you have come far, but you do not yet understand everything. Dooku is too great an obstacle for you to overcome at this time." In this version, Palpatine could no longer use Padme as a bargaining chip, because in that storyline, there was no romance. Instead, he promised power. Over the course of several conversations, he said that by his side, Anakin would be unstoppable, that all the masters who had humiliated him would one day fall before him. "With me, you would have the power to defeat Mace and Yoda, and maybe even Dooku. With me, you will dictate the rules of the galaxy." And Anakin, weakened and aimless, began to listen. Each word found cracks in his vanity, in his resentment. Palpatine realized this. He left the cell smiling, convinced that just one more spark was enough to ignite the flame of surrender. Then, one morning without warning, Palpatine opened the cell. "You are free," he said. "The Count is resting, unsuspecting. Do what must be done. Kill him and take your rightful place." Anakin hesitated for a moment, but the anger burned again. However, before he could answer, a loud crash cut through the air. Obi-Wan emerged from the shadows like a bolt of lightning, his cloak swirling with the impact of his entrance. Without hesitation, he extended his arm and threw Palpatine against the opposite wall with a brutal blast of the Force. The impact echoed like thunder in the hallway. Palpatine fell, and for a second his hood slipped, revealing the familiar face of the Sith Lord. Obi-Wan froze. "You!" he whispered, his eyes wide. "You are the Sith we have been looking for?" Palpatine rose with a look of rage clouding his eyes, his yellow eyes burning like dead suns. With a gesture, he broke the hold that bound him and pushed Obi-Wan back. "How did you get here, Kenobi?" he spat. The Jedi Master brushed the dust from his robe and replied firmly. "I tracked Anakin from the moment he disappeared. He is my apprentice. I know him. I sent the coordinates to the Republic. They are already here." The air around them vibrated with the sounds of battle in the corridors and outside. And before they could say more, Dooku appeared on the stairs, his curved lightsaber lit. There was no turning back. They were all plunged into war. The confrontation erupted both outside and in the center of the hall. Anakin and Obi-Wan dueled Dooku, while Palpatine charged with the Force, trying to separate them. It was a chaotic dance between lightsabers and flying debris, where every step was life or death. Anakin blocked Dooku's side attacks with short Sorisu movements, deflecting cuts with precision. Obi-Wan retreated and attacked with his classic style, combining elegance and moderate aggression. But they were at a disadvantage. The combined power of Dooku and Palpatine was suffocating, and the Force obscured everything around them. It seemed like the end. Then the iron doors of the hangar crumpled like paper under a devastating impact. Mace Windu burst in with his purple lightsaber in hand. Behind him, Master Yoda walked with absolute serenity, as if the chaos around him did not exist. They both stopped beside Obi-Wan and Anakin, and no one needed to say a word. When they saw the red lightsaber in Palpatine's hands and felt the density of the dark side of the Force in his presence, the truth needed no words. Palpatine was the long-sought enemy. Dooku, the pawn who still resisted. The Jedi prepared themselves, and the war indeed began there. On the left side of the hall, Anakin and Obi-Wan surrounded Dooku. For the first time, Anakin understood something he had never considered before. He didn't have to be the center. Seeing Obi-Wan move with intelligence and poise, he began to use the styles he had mastered as supporting tools. When the Count advanced, Anakin used Makashi to paralyze his fists with light thrusts. He then applied a spin with Ataru, jumping over the Count to force him to turn around. When Dooku attacked Obi-Wan, Anakin absorbed the impact with Xian, redirecting the saber in an arc to unbalance him. Finally, he used Nyman to push with the Force, opening a gap. It was in that split second that Obi-Wan advanced with his saber raised, and with a sharp spin cut Dooku in half. The Count's body fell like an empty cloak, his eyes still open in surprise. Anakin fell to his knees, panting, feeling a mixture of relief and guilt. But there was no time for reflection. On the other side of the hall, true evil still fought on. Palpatine raised his arms and summoned Force lightning in spirals that knocked down columns and shattered the floor. Yoda spun around him like a fast-moving star, dodging everything with agile and unpredictable movements, while Windu advanced brutally, each blow a hammer blow of pure intent. Palpatine hurled a support column at Windu, who split it in half with a single blow. Yoda leaped over debris, striking the Sith in the flanks, cutting, dodging, returning. Windu then channeled his enemy's fury and redirected it with Vapad, cutting off one of the Sith's shoulders with a clean blow. Palpatine roared, throwing everything he could: beams, rocks, energy panels, but nothing stopped the masters. Finally, Yoda created a distraction, spinning in the air and striking Palpatine from behind. Windu took advantage of the opening and both jumped together, plunging their sabers into the Sith Lord's chest at the same time. The scream that echoed was the end of an era. The silence that followed was filled with shards and smoke. Anakin approached, his eyes downcast. "Masters," he said, his voice heavy. "I was wrong. About everything. I thought the Force was about domination, but the real Force is about service." His eyes filled with tears. "I was arrogant. I ignored advice. I believed that fighting alone would make me better. But I found only defeat and loneliness." Obi-Wan placed his hand on his shoulder. "You came back in time." Yoda nodded, looking at him tenderly. "Understand, now you understand. And because of that, Jedi you still can be." With the rubble of battle around them, the Jedi joined together to evacuate the base. The clones celebrated, but the Masters remained silent after the narrow victory. Anakin, though wounded, walked steadily alongside Obi-Wan, Mace, and Yoda, no longer an obsessed apprentice, but someone who finally understood his place. There were still shadows on the horizon, but there was also hope. The Jedi Temple awaited him, and perhaps this time he would return not as the chosen one, but as the Jedi who finally chose to listen.